They showed up for me last night and this morning. I'm currently doing a lot of work that's all focused around compliance for a fund that we're working with currently. And my work is all about trying to show that every single cost that we've spent over the last year has been precisely what was the plan 12 months ago, because that is the regulation that's in place to show our accountability, rather than using that time for learning or to focus on the accountability where it really matters. I'm focusing on our pay and being reminded constantly as we're trying to work out what our pay structure might be for dark matter labs, that the system that we're currently in is structured to try and value what each of our contributions is, negotiate with us around what those values are, monetize them, and to set them up as rewards, and what that shows up, what culture that creates within us, rather than trying to kind of set the conditions for us to be able to do our best work together. And I'm reminded of them regularly at the moment, being in the UK, in a system, in a government that organises much around control and centralisation, and how that shows up in things just within the last week, things like free school meals, and what that means for some of the most vulnerable people in our society that aren't getting adequate provision. And that's an emotional one for me, as you can see. But this is what the crux is about, what this project is about, right? It's like, together as partners, we identify that the systems that we're working in, and the assumptions behind how we're showing up, and the regulations and the rules that we're creating, and how we show up financially, contractually, culturally, behaviorally, they shape what we create. And as a group of organizations that are set up to do something that's not about stakeholder extraction or just individual benefit, we're here for a wider purpose, that it's so important that as organizations we're also trying to question and think about and practically create the type of structures and systems that we want to see for the world that we want to try and bring about. To stop building systems that are around control and stratification in the ways that we work, and to start building them more around how we can have shared agency and learn continuously from the work that we're doing, and work as systems actors, think about ourselves as how we're interconnected in the systems around us, and all of the issues, how they're interconnected. And that's kind of a bit of the guiding philosophy behind this work. Practically, what does that mean? I'll try and describe in as practical terms as possible what tangibly that kind of shows up as. So we're currently, we're 5 partners in the project in this phase that we're in at the moment. So there's Lankelly Chase, and Joe, who introduced us there, is from Lankelly Chase. They're funding this stage of the work. And they're also looking internally at how they structure and govern and distribute funds and act as a funder, and how they can make, change the ways that they do that, and build upon them. And also about bringing together an alliance of funders who can think about embedding these into the ways that they work in how they do funding. There's then Demsoc, who look at more democratic ways of governing, so that citizens can be more informed, active participants in the decisions that shape their lives. Them together with Dark Matter Labs, which obviously is the organisation that I'm part of here. We focus on mainly on the transition of core infrastructure, so finances, contracting, governance, organising, and how those need to shift in the century ahead. Between Demsoc and Dark Matter Labs, we're kind of responsible for the main work around the researching and interviewing and learning and kind of gathering insights and building network in this project. And we also have in our partnership York MCN Network, which is a network about improving the lives of those experiencing multiple complex needs, and changing the systems that sustain and prolong the disadvantage that they face. And Black Thrive, which is a partnership working to address Black mental health inequalities in Lambeth. And they're currently going through a transition, becoming a Black-led network, and exploring in practice what that's going to mean for them. And they're York MCN and Black Thrive are also sharing what they're learning through into the partnership, and we're finding ways of how what's being learned can feed into the changes that they're making. And all of us are trying to do shifts within our individual organizations and bring that into the project here. So far, I mean, we've been kind of in this partnership since summer last year. A lot of the work that we've been doing so far has been about laying the groundwork, so understanding where our roles are, what this is about, what we're coming together around, what it might look like. We're going into a next phase now, I'd say over the next, up until this summer, particularly for Demsoc and Dark Matter Labs, where we're focusing a lot on the interviewing and the researching side of things, to put quite a lot of time and energy into gathering together lots of insights and how that's done. And we'll talk a bit later about, you know, what some of those output kind of things might be. And we'd really like your feedback about how we spend that energy and how's that's best done. Because essentially really what we're trying to do here is build upon what's already been done in this work, build upon it, hopefully take it forward a bit. You know, we see this phase that we're doing currently as just one stage into a longer term plan about how actually collectively, you know, the people here and beyond can come together to help shift the work that we're doing more forward, and ultimately to actually change some of those rules that sit behind, some of the deeper regulatory rules that sit underneath what we're working within. So we'd really love to invite you to help, you know, provide your critical insight, your provocative questions, your constructive ideas and otherwise, and to help shape where this might go, because I think the next stage is also very much going to be kind of co-shaped as we go. So that's from me. I'll put a few links in the chat to some blogs and a Miro board that we've created that some of you may have seen and some not, just if anyone's interested in looking into it further. But hopefully that gives a bit of an overview about what this is all about. Back over to you, Joe.
Lovely, thank you, Annette. So we're going to have our first talky bit of this open house. I mean, there are certain members who are here today, namely Cassie Robinson, who is trying to turn this into a rave, I've noticed. We're going to keep it calm for a little while, I think, and have a chat instead, which is much more interesting. So there are going to be 3 groups of people who will go into the kitchen, the dining room, and the spare bedroom. Within those groups, is it 4, Pandora? Are you holding up 4? I don't know any other rooms in houses. The greenhouse. And then you will have 1 BTR Project Team member in there who will scribble, 1 BTR Project Team member in there who will make sure you're not trying to organise a Robinson rave. And then we'll come back together after about 15 minutes and talk about what we've talked about. You know, there's lots of talking. And then Alex is going to do some magic and mix everyone up and go into different rooms with different groups of people, which is some young person magic that I don't understand. I hope you enjoyed exploring parts of our open house, and I feel that I've explored parts of the house I didn't know that were there, which is really nice. And definitely the need to do some decorating in those parts of the house that we don't often travel to. So there were 4 breakout rooms. We've got 5 minutes for those 4 breakout rooms to break back into this big room and have a quick rundown of what you talked about. Room 1, would you like to go first?
On our room would prefer to do a summary. There's probably people that were more placed, but I'm quite happy to try there. I mean, I think we covered there were some really interesting insights that were shared. I think quite a bit about how that some of the things that get difficult for organizations is about the tension between trying to operate in existing systems whilst building new ones, and trying to be compliant whilst being bold, and better, like being able to share about how people are navigating those tensions, both practically, but also how those are socialized in their context. So not just like tools that are standalone without context, but contextualized ways that people have developed particular tools, gotten around regulations or compliance, whatever that's needed, and done that in a way that's true to their cultures. And having different examples of that and being able to share, and maybe a community of practice around that, could really help people to not keep reinventing the wheel that's needed each time we're trying to individually work on making the changes in our own organizations. I think hopefully that brings together there was quite a lot of different comments, so hopefully I've sort of summarized those to a certain degree well enough.
Brilliant, thank you, Annette. Anybody else from room one want to add to what Annette's just said, or shall we move swiftly and seamlessly on to room two?
I think was Chloe and Alex. Yeah, so it was a very interesting discussion. I think maybe picking up from what Annette was saying, there was definitely a conversation around sort of an initial conversation around the tensions between the existing system and the emerging system, and to understand how change can happen, both from focusing on the new and also from sort of retrofitting the old. And in terms of some of the capabilities that we discussed that we need to work on, we discussed sort of the need for understanding as we transition from hierarchies. We need to improve how we communicate with each other. We also need to improve sort of our individual ability to deal with personal accountability, new approaches to learning, and how that can be increasingly two-wayed. Also, we discussed a little bit around sort of, there was a very interesting point around how cultures and processes are so interlinked, and it's often you only find out something by doing it. So we need to find better ways of sort of sharing the learning that people have while being cognizant of the processes you're inventing are a product of your culture, and it's also entrenching certain cultures. And then I think there was another very interesting point around the sort of paradigms that would drive certain incentives. So the fact that certain business models, it's quite difficult to be radically different in the way you organize if we accept certain business models like external consultancy, let's say, and the work that needs to be done internally. Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone else from our group would like to add to that. I feel like I'll...
No? Okay, cheers, Chloe. Room three, please.
Which was Astro. And Pandora. So I think from our lots of different threads of conversations in our group, thinking around accountability and how we can make that mutually shared, and moving from kind of me to we, and sort of linking in as well to agenda setting and power dynamics and collective understanding. So quite a lot about how we work, I guess, how we work together collaboratively whilst acknowledging the existing dynamics and tensions that can go along with that. So sort of similar themes. An interesting conversation around negotiating and how we develop and make negotiating kind of more comfortable and safer for people within these kind of conversations. And as well, just building on how kind of policies and processes are very binary, and how can we maintain flexibility for within creation of policy and processes that can continually be developed as things change and time moves on. So it might be that we create something now that fits with the today, but in a week's time it'll already be outdated. So how can we build into policies and processes that flexibility to continually be reviewed and kind of developed? And something around as well capacity, like capacity for people getting involved in this work, and recognizing the world at the moment, and people fighting for survival, organizations struggling. So this can be really interesting, but actually just acknowledging that and thinking about the practical and tangible things that people can hold on to be involved, as well as the interesting kind of conceptual discussions. I don't know if there's anything I've missed out of that.
Lovely, cheers, Catherine. And room 4, please.
Yeah, that's me. Thanks, Joe. So again, our conversation was quite thready, but I've kind of tried to, basically there will be things that I missed, so apologies to my group. But we had a chat about the rules themselves. So lots of chat about rules being encoded through things like normal grant funding. So we need to radically redesign those. We need to unpick rules into pieces that are hardwired, and rules need to be more transparent. So if we don't dismantle those rules that create the injustice, inequity, the power imbalance, discrimination, then we're reproducing the same outcomes through whatever we build. We talked about the idea of the humane organisation and what that really means, supporting people to be brave and to question, and that needs to be practical. We thought as well about how we communicate the change of rules and how humane organisations themselves can connect with each other. So almost kind of collective reshaping, better flow of information, ideas, collaborative support and effort. We talked about power and accountability. So I can't remember who it was, but we talked about due diligence processes often are imposed further down the chain. So those that receive grants, for example, but never at the same frequency or level on those that hold the power. We talked a lot more about empowering individuals to make a difference, either to methods or action or within corporate cultures themselves. And then just quickly from what was missing, we thought about who's missing from this new network. And a nice quote here is, organic networks are beautiful, but can create people like me issues. So that's a quick summary from our chat. Sorry if that was terrible, group 4, but there it is.
Brilliant, thank you, Kevin. Sounds like, so a summary from me, the most important person here, obviously, because I am unmuted, is that sounds like every single conversation we've had at various points over the last 10 months or so. So that's really nice to hear. Alex is going to play DJ and mix you all up and send you off into different groups in different rooms with different questions, I imagine. Different questions? Yeah. See you in a bit. Group 1, what hit home for you? And there's a poll coming up that Alex has just popped up, which is about how to stay involved, what to do next along those lines. Group 1, what hit home for you? Or if not group 1, anyone that wants to go.
I'll go first from group 4. So I guess we had the biggest conversation that we had was around how we learn as humans, and how rules are imposed on us because of a lack of trust, and we had a really good conversation about cooperative skills. I think Ed started us off on that journey, thinking about how we have to unlearn everything that we're taught to live in a capitalist world, a capitalist society. We have to relearn how to cooperate, how to collaborate with others, from a very individual level right up to a societal community level. So there's lots of great notes on that. Yeah, that was the main kind of conversation from our group. And I think to start with, we talked a lot about journalism and how journalists can be useful, journalism being the backbone of kind of civil society, and the way that journalism as an industry is functioning in terms of kind of journalists working freelance, having to self-organise and self-regulate that industry, being really interesting.
Fantastic. Cheers, Kevin. Who wants to go next?
I'm happy to. So we chatted about everything from kind of how you shift the culture within organisations to the kind of change needed in funding and philanthropy, and the kind of rules that are being imposed on organisations, whether that's in civil society or, you know, public sector. There was a lot of kind of conversations about trust and feeling permissions to actually challenge ways of working, and how these changes usually happen on a small scale but can be quite difficult with large organisations, and are often in sectors which you might expect to be a bit more kind of experimental or progressive in their thinking. So for instance, in cultural sectors, which often have a very archaic way of actually being run, but full of progressives and free thinkers. But if anyone wants to chime in from my and Chloe's group, please feel free.
Cool. Cheers, Alex. Who's up next?
I don't mind going for group 3, I think. Although I was going to say, does someone else want to take it rather than just my voice? But I'll give it a go. So yeah, interesting conversations around building new things whilst working alongside existing systems. So acknowledging existing systems are built on unhelpful ways of working, but that you have to bring some of those systems, kind of HMRC and other kind of government policies and processes, into your own organisation. So how can we work to build new things within our own organisations whilst also disrupting and challenging existing structures and processes, and talking quite a bit about language and intersectionality and kind of going back to flexibility as well within that. And then quite an interesting conversation about power and influence, and when we intervene and when we don't intervene, and how can we, do we allow things to develop naturally, and when do we start to try and influence things, and acknowledging our power in doing that. So setting principles of working, setting agendas, all of those kind of things. And linking as well to scale and people trying out doing things differently, and bigger organizations having, like, assuming they have more power and scaling things up. And actually, is that useful, or is it a kind of false idea of power and where change happens? So hopefully that was a vague capturing of things.
Brilliant. Cheers, Catherine. And the final group. Is there a final group, or am I making that up? Looks like I'm making it up.
I think
You are not.
Annette and Mel.
Yep.
You want to do? You were in that group too, Joe. Do you want to do the summary from our group?
On mute.
You're on mute. Mel, I haven't captured everything in my brain. I can't remember. My brain doesn't hold that much content.
We are at your hourly working limit for the day, Annette, aren't we?
I'll do a quick, because I did capture the notes. So I'll just do a very quick look at them. There was quite a lot of stuff around people thinking about the change externally, but also how perhaps internally in the organisations or institutions, bringing about those cultural shifts, rules, regulations is perhaps more challenging, and how different practices from Quaker to sociocracy do and don't work in different contexts and with different people. And then there was a discussion around, a bit of a practical discussion, and Joe mentioned a wiki, so it'd be great to see what that materializes into, around connecting those ideas, tools, people who have needs, people who can contribute and support each other, and almost kind of seeing where that goes, building on some work that's been done in the Miro board around potential outcomes, and whether there's a way that people could collaborate around the outcomes rather than organizations and hierarchy to start having a go at stuff. So I think there was a kind of, come on, let's crack on and let's get something happening.
Cheers, Mel. That's lovely. And which also leads us beautifully onto what our next steps could look like, which let's give Annette the moral support to get through this last bit, because your name's next to it on the sheet.
Is it excellent? Excellent. Well, I mean, I think that one of the things we wanted to do here with all of you also is, you know, we've been sitting with a series of assumptions that we've been testing to a certain degree through different conversations and through things that we've collectively been experiencing over years. And we wanted to hear wider from lots of other people's experiences and assumptions. So there's an activity for us as a project group off the back of this to also look at the plans that we've got in place so far and iterate them, bringing in the learning that you've shared today. So we'll be doing that and sharing back out again with what I expect will then go back out with a bit of a clearer kind of plan to a certain degree of activity over the up and from here until summer, and some more specific and tangible invites to be part and what that looks like and the practicalities around it. And we'd like that, you know, we just want to know that whilst we'll be trying to be quite practical about that, there's an ongoing feedback loop that we'll very much welcome. And we'll take because we've been capturing what people have been saying. There's been all sorts of so many nuggets of wisdom shared through everyone here today. So we've been trying to capture what's been shared, the chats and everything, collate that together into something that we can then share together open source, so that everybody's got you know, access to the different conversations that were had today, and can use that respectively in their organizations. We're expecting a lot of the work that we'll be doing over the next 6 months will have an element of research and interviews and kind of gathering information in different ways that is useful for people that will be sharing. And I imagine we'll also be getting in contact with various people as part of that. So for now, I think those are the specific next steps, and we'll be getting back out in contact. Particularly, people put their names on the list that was in the Dark Matter Labs blog, saying I'd like to be in the loop of what's happening. So we'll use that and the invites. And if anybody didn't want to receive that, or do let us know, of course. But that I think is our next steps. Is that right, Joe?
That makes sense to me. So if anybody here, so our open house means it is now your house as well. So please get in touch with us if you want to contribute. If you don't, if you think that you've heard something interesting or you're doing something interesting and other people need to hear about it, then please, this is our house. So this is it's our house. We'll have a lovely library. That's another room you can have in a house. Have a lovely library of stuff. I think we are close to, or if not, at the end of MTV Cribs, where they used to say, all right, get out, and all of that sort of stuff, which I don't want to say that. But Annette's faded, I'm fading. Pandora's nervous energy has sustained her to this point, and it's not going to any longer. So I'm going to say goodbye. And thank you all for coming to our house, which is now your house as well. Looking forward to seeing you all again soon. And definitely next time I won't be hosting. And bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.